Now, we're in our series on apologetics and defending the faith, and I wanted to lay down a foundation for why we as a church exist. Really, what's our theme or reason for being? And so let's start out at the beginning. God gave us the name Covenant Christian Center 15 years ago by a dear friend of ours who's gone on to be with the Lord. Her and her husband and I, we were having ice cream over at Irma's. Okay, just no. And she said, you need to start a church. And I'm like, so much for friends. And I thought she was hopped up on custard. And I said, well, because I just wanted to tuck underneath as an associate somewhere and, pass the buck on responsibility. That's just what it's all about, right? And she said, no, really, I believe that the Lord would have you to do that. And I said, well, I don't know about that. And so she says, well, there's a quorum here. And so her husband voted, my wife voted, and she voted, and they voted we started a church. Then he took out $20 to give to my wife. Of course, my wife works for a law firm, so she instantly got that whole thing going. I got bum rushed into this. This was not my idea. So anyway, so you need a name for a church because we can't just be known as like Enigma or anything. And so the Lord gave me Covenant Christian Center. And I'm like, I was looking for something cool and hip. You've got Vox, Paradox, Eternity Church, Covenant Christian. I mean, we used almost all the, the letters in the alphabet on this name. And it was international at the time. I said, wow, I was really kind of hoping for something more, But God wasn't looking to be cool and hip, but really revelatory and relational. And that's really where we're going to start today. So really want to start off with the idea of why covenant? Why pick the name covenant? And it's really important because a lot of people have a false presupposition of what Christianity is, as if it's this self-ascribed, be what you want to be, don't be today, tomorrow, and I'll believe what I want. It's funny when I meet people and they're like, I said, well, that's not really, how God, well, you shouldn't judge. I said, yeah, I can judge. I work for the guy who called me. Yeah, that's my job. Well, you don't know. Yeah, I do know. That's my job. It's kind of an argument that goes on. But God laid down some principles in the Bible, and he's very clear. The Bible is not this squishy thing. And especially when you go to school and you study Hebrew and Greek, you'll find that they're very specific in languages, and everything that God did has a meaning. There's no just because. Like, there's a reason for everything that he did. And you'll see this actually go on down through the history of time, where he'll do something and then nothing will manifest for 2,000 years. And God's good with that because God doesn't have a watch. So he isn't really looking for mankind to like what he does, but just to be obedient and trust him. And that's really what we're going to talk about today. Well, we're going to start with a definition of covenant and as our springboard to where we're going to go today. And then we'll take off and see what God does. A covenant is a contract of blessings and curses, all right, which lays out a structure or a parameter for the ones in the covenant to follow. Okay. Now, the covenant, the main covenant, what our church is named after, we'll get to in a bit, but one of the first covenants that God made was with a guy named Abraham, in which he put him to sleep. Now, the reason he put him to sleep when he made this covenant is because it's a one-sided covenant. Covenant is usually two-sided, but God knew that Abraham, although a godly man, couldn't pull this off. Because what they would do when you take a covenant is that the two parties would stand opposite of several animals that they had hacked in half, a big bloody mess, and they would lay one on one side, one on the other, and they made a kind of a runway, if you will. And the guy would take off, say, somebody like my groovy vest, so I'd give him my groovy vest. He would give me not his groovy vest. I would take a letter from my name. I would give it to him. He would take a letter from his name. Hello, ladies. Name switch. And he would take the name, and then I would add to it. You know what I'm saying? And then when it was time, they would walk through these dead animals, and they would say, may this happen to you if you break this covenant. Okay, and there's this big bloody mess, which is kind of visual, because apparently they didn't have much of an imagination back then. I don't know. And then he would say the same, or she, or however it worked. And then they would have a meal. If there was salt involved, and it involved the salt covenant, he would take some salt out because people used to get paid in salt. It was very rare. And so if someone put their salt, took some salt and put it over your food, that means you're worth your salt. That's where we get that term. Okay, so then you form this salt covenant. Then they would take the ash from the meal, the fire that they had, because they didn't have stoves back then, and they would make a cut with their sword, and they would put that ash in there and leave a permanent mark. That's why when Jesus came out of the tombs, he kept his holes in his hands as a permanent covenant with us. Because remember, his whole body became perfect, but he left a hole in his side, and the feet and the hands he left as a sign of covenant. Okay. Now, I said all that to say this, that covenant is how God does everything. Period. Okay? So, covenant is also the law that is to be followed in the area of influence that we are to rule and influence for the kingdom of God. If you find that your world is topsy-turvy, it's because you have not been ruling it according to the scriptures. Okay? Because if we go back to Genesis, when God spoke to Adam and Eve, he said, let them rule. Let them take dominion. Okay? Over everything that I created. Now, he didn't say that to the animals, so that delineates the animals from us, and why when you kill an animal, that is not murder, because they don't have a spirit, they don't go to heaven. Although everyone wants to believe that their puppy's in heaven, fine, whatever you believe in, that's fine. I believe God will make new. I don't want a recycled dog. Now, some people are like, the cat lovers don't even get that. But the point is that he said you're to dominate, to take dominion, to rule over and establish the kingdom. Now, for those of you who are a little hung up on this, let me help you. When you do the Our Father, you say, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. I used to be Catholic, so we did fast because we were in a hurry, and we were catching the last mass before we went off to beef carver, and then immediately tried to get all of the cheesy gratin potatoes before somebody else did. And you say, thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. So we are to bring down a kingdom principle from the fourth dimension into the third dimension. Okay, you understand it. I said this the other day. You are a reflection of God. Now, God is illumination. So, fourth dimension, third dimensional people. When there's light behind me and it's illuminated, I give off a two-dimensional shadow. 2, 3, 4. Are you following me? Are you picking up what I'm putting down? All right. So, since this is the case, we are to bring the fourth dimensional principles into the third dimension. Because when God walked the earth with Adam and Eve, everything was perfect. It was great. And then, of course, one time in history, a woman decides she knows what she wants for dinner, and then, well, everything went to pot. Lighten up a little bit. Anyways, so what happens is this. Everything was the way God had established. Everything was in line. The animals didn't attack each other, and husbands and wife got along. You hear things. And it was beautiful, and God walked the earth. So his presence was there. So wherever God's presence is, there's always peace, and everything goes according to plan. Now, who does God use now in this new dispensation, Jesus, through us, to do the same thing? But where we walk now is to bring a Garden of Eden experience to everyone we encounter. Are you with me? Are you picking up what I'm putting down? Are you guys awake? You guys are kind of quiet. All right. Now, how you live your life dictates the area of influence around you. You say, well, I'm really nice sometimes and people are still jerks. Well, your area of influence, it's kind of like cutting down an oak tree. No matter how good and how big your axe is, first time you swing on that oak tree, it's probably not falling down. So if you have huge, established, old, demonic principles, for lack of a better word, that has established a tree, if you will, and I'm using euphemisms, and you swing at it, it may not fall. You might have to hack at it every day. But eventually, it falls. Okay? Eventually. Why? Why does it take so long? Because you're not God. We have that whole people's choosing to go against God. Plus, how many people here actually are equal to the power of God at this moment? Because we can test it. We just walk out to Well, we can't do that now because then that wouldn't work. I was going to say we could all walk on water. And I do, usually during ice fishing. But you can't walk on water. We can't permeate through a wall. So your spiritual power, as you get closer to the Lord, as you bring that domination of the love of God, that's the most powerful weapon that we have, as you bring that into your area of influence, into your world, you bring a Garden of Eden experience. Does this make sense to everybody? Okay? So turn to your neighbor and tell them, that's your job. So the law of your area of influence in the kingdom that you are to rule and influence is covenant. And it's not open for discussion. That's the interesting thing about a covenant. Once it's made, it's not open for discussion. Okay, there are no such thing as open marriages. There's no such thing. Okay? It just means that you wanted wedding cake and gifts, but you were still going to live whoring around. Okay? That's just how it is. And if you have a problem with that word, it's in the Bible. Now, once you enact a covenant, it is solid and it is stable. Okay? And once it's entered in, you're not supposed to get out of it. Okay? So follow me. If you follow the rules in the old covenant, you were blessed. And if you didn't, you were cursed. It's quite simple. But when you enter into the New Testament, into the new covenant, once this was enacted, then the reason being for the covenant is no longer rules that are imposed, because rules that are imposed because you have to are never as easy as to follow as parameters laid out through a love relationship. So if you're oppressed, you're going to do it because you got to. But like when my mother would spank me as a child, she'd make me sit down. I would say, but I'm standing up on the inside. Do you see what I'm saying? Oh, I sat down. Well, I didn't want to sometimes, but that was back when they were allowed to actually beat children. Now, of course, you're not allowed to. You know, the rules and everything. Oh, severely. You know. My mother always gets upset when I say beat, you know. Shelby's like, no, that's about right. Yeah, it's about how that worked. I always tell people, for those of you who have a problem with spanking, you got to understand, the butt's already cracked, so it ain't like you're going to break it. You know what I'm saying? It's already cracked. And so, can you say butt crack in church? I just did. Anyways, so rules that are forced, religion, the reason why people turn away from churches, people say, well, that supernatural stuff scares them. No, it doesn't scare them, it draws them. What scares people are when they're told to do something by someone they're not in love with. I think that stung a little bit. That was good. I should have had that in my notes. My gosh, I'm on fire. I should sit down and listen to myself. Hallelujah. Go, brother. Get a lot more help than y'all. Y'all just looking. He said butt crack. When you're in love with someone, the rules don't really become rules, but they become a covenant parameter that defines the relationship. Okay? My wife does what I tell her. Wow. Now I'm lying in church. I'm in a lot of trouble right now. I know, I got real scared all of a sudden. I realized, son, you're way out on that limb. Even Rick's looking at me going, it's not an imposition. The Bible says that God's principles are not an imposition to us because we love him. How many women here who have been involved with some sort of male person, because nowadays you have to be very careful with this, it was understood that when you're dating and you're together, he's not allowed to date other people. And you enjoyed that concept. You were like, that's mine. He's mine. He's mine. Look what I got and you don't got none. And so, you get all excited about it. And then like when he gives you the ring, then you're like, hello, everyone. And you dig that, okay? Because there's something about the exclusivity of the relationship that causes your love to blossom. And you're more apt to want to be in a deeper relationship as you grow to know that person. Well, that's the whole principle of covenant with God. He expects us to be in a covenant that the more we fall in love with him, the less the things that define the parameters bother you, because you don't want to go someplace else. You know. Are you following me? Okay. I'm trying to move quickly. So, there are 4 covenants in the Old Testament, and this confuses folks. For when we read the law in the New Testament, you hear people say, well, we're no longer under the law, so anything in the law doesn't apply. I always ask them, they say, well, that's Old Covenant. And I always ask them, which part of it? Because, see, there are 4 covenants in the Old Testament, only 1 in the New. So let's look at a few of these covenants. First covenant is the Noahic covenant. And by the way, that is still in effect. That's the one that God gave, because how many people have seen a rainbow? Okay, so if you still saw a rainbow, and I don't mean attached to somebody from LGBT, the actual in the sky stuff, the reason for that is it is a reminder that God will never flood the earth again. So that covenant is still in effect. Now, if you look into these covenants, you'll find that those things are still supposed to apply. Okay? So that covenant, Jesus did not abolish. Why? We still have rainbows. All right? You read this in Genesis 9:11. He says, I establish my covenant with you that never again. Now, when God says never again, do you know that that means never again? I know it's deep. It's a Hebrew meaning never. And all flesh will never be cut off by the waters of the flood, and never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. Okay? The second one we have is the Abrahamic covenant. Genesis 12, 1 through 3. You can turn there or flip through your phone. Just don't swipe because people wonder what you're on. It says, now the Lord said to Abram, this was before he became Abraham and had a covenant with God where he put him to sleep. And the reason why he put him to sleep, because he knew Abraham couldn't fulfill the covenant. And as soon as a human being, he sinned, God would have to kill him. So what he did was he actually himself personally went through alone. Because man would have, has anyone sinned in the last month? I'm the only guy. You guys all leave the pastor hanging with his arm in the air. You're like, oh no. So we'd all be dead. You know what I'm saying? So God knew that we are, the Bible says, God knew that we were but dust. Now, I don't know what but dust is, but apparently he said we are but dust. And so that means that we would have made an error. And he would have had to kill us. So he put him to sleep, and he said, I'm going to make this a one-sided covenant. Okay, this is the Abrahamic covenant. Now, pay very close attention. He says this, how the covenant was enacted was a sacrificial thing. And what was the sacrifice? He said, get out of your country, out of your comfort zone, from where your family and your father's house is. Sometimes it's very hard to follow God when your family's involved. Do I get an amen or an oh my? Right on, right on. He says, to a land I'm going to show you, but I'm not going to tell you where it is. So just sell everything you have, drop everything, leave your house, and just roll. And Abraham's like, cool. I, on the other hand, would have wanted multiple people to pray. A lot of confirmation. And he says, if you do this, and you leave your father's house, notice small, I will make you, because of your faith in the covenant, a great nation. So sacrifice small, receive big. Wow, that was back to that tithe thing, didn't it? Did you see how that tied right back in? Hammer 'em. I got in the ministry for the money. That's why I did this. Anyways, he says, I will bless you and make your name great. Say legacy. Yeah, so you don't live just because you lived. You live when other people show up to your funeral to talk about what you did in their lives. That's how you know you lived. If your family's there, that don't count. They got to be there anyways because someone's got to pay for the doggone buffet afterwards in which we eat our feelings away if we liked you or not. Because guilt is everything and cake makes everything better. Oh, look, cake. He says, I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. And in you, all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Now, let me show you what happens. When our man, Mr. Bush, told Israel to divide their land and give the land to the Palestinians, our economy went into poopa. Okay? Because the covenant, the Abrahamic covenant, is still in play. We are to be blessed through the Jews. We told the Jews to divide their land. God says, you can't do that. George Bush says, we're going to do it. I think it'd be prudent. And so he was wrong. And the economy went down in a blaze of glory. That's for the people from the 80s. Then, when our current president validated Israel and said, we're going to move our embassy there, giving them credibility, we're now at 26,000. So, just goes to show even a blind squirrel can get a nut. So this involved three things. Watch the covenant, because this is very important. I'm not trying to be political. If you're offended by it, then practice forgiveness. We also believe in that. Now, he says, I will make you a great nation. Now, when the children of Israel violated God's law, God would punish them. He put them into slavery with the Egyptians for 400 years and made them build the pyramids. So I say we tear down any sign of slavery or anything like that and tear down the pyramids because it's offensive to the Jews. Then, of course, the Babylonians picked up on that, the Persians, the Assyrians. So they've been enslaved a lot because they kept rebelling and not following the covenant. Okay? Now pay very close because it's all about covenant here. Now, 1940s, there's this guy with a little tiny mustache and brown pants. The reason he wore brown pants is he had a fear of the Americans. And so he wanted to make sure no one saw what happens when we come over there because he messed his pants when we showed up. That's right, that's right. Booyah. Whenever you see a Frenchman, you ask him, do you speak German? He says, no. You say, you're welcome. So that's how that went down. But in the process, he kills like a lot of Jewish people. Okay? Now, I kind of believe that the reason that happened is because of something that they said. When Jesus was being crucified, the high priest who would go behind the veil once a year had to be stripped naked, bathe 7 times, forgive everybody. They tied a rope around his ankle. He had to have blood, lamb's blood, and he had to go behind the veil to pay for the sins of everyone. Jesus, the Messiah, the Jews didn't want because they were too in love with the parameters of the covenant, not the one who made the covenant. So when Jesus comes on the scene as the lamb, and he's now our new high priest, the old high priest says, I reject you, probably job security, and we say, you're going to die. And he says, let his blood be on us and our children. Now, when you say that, you took God's plan for all of creation, because when Adam and Eve sinned, God was like, oh, what happened? Oh, no. Jesus, you're going to have to, 2,000 years, you're going to have to die later for this because they just screwed up. And God already had that plan. So Jesus was the pinnacle of God's plan for creation. Now, when you want to know why and all of that, you can either go and get a doctorate like me or just wait till you die and ask Jesus because you're going to have all eternity to ask him, okay? Because if you make it. Now, some of you here, I don't know, look around. Wow, that's harsh. People are like, So he said, as the high priest who stands for all of the people, all of the Jews, who pays for the sin, I defy God, your plan, and rejected the Messiah. He had one job, to represent the people, to get sins paid for. Instead, he took all of the sins, because when Jesus hung on the tree, the cross, his blood was shed, and he became sin. That's why it got so dark, the earth shook, and everything went dark, and blah, blah, blah. He took all of the sins that will ever be committed from that point, from the past and forward, took it upon himself. Now this high priest with the big mouth says, let all that come on us. And in 1940, on the cosmic level, you should always keep your mouth shut. Okay? If you ain't got it like that, don't do it like that. You know what I'm saying? Don't fake a funk on a nasty dunk. So this guy, Adolf, jacks everybody up. Now, here's what happens. God saw that, but look what God did. Immediately after the war, the UN finds out about it. They first tried to deny it, and then they were like, there's a lot of people here. So what they said to the Jews is, we'll let you declare yourself a nation over your little tiny strip of land. Looks like so. And then they're surrounded by, you got Syria and Jordan, and you've got Egypt down here. And he said, you guys, we're going to, that sacrifice of 6,000 people birthed a nation. Okay? Now, I'm not saying God sacrificed his own people. I'm not saying their blood was the thing. I'm saying the numbskull who said, oh, let all the sins of the world be on us, could have been the reason for why you had the Holocaust. But every time man screws up, God always has a counterplan, especially for the Jews. Why? Because Abraham was put asleep. So there are consequences for his sin, but God always sticks to his covenant. I don't know if they're with me, bro. Okay. Does that upset anyone? My uncle died in Auschwitz. So for those of you like, he's a Jew hater. No, I'm not a Jew hater. I'm a Jew. Number 2, it says that the nation will be led into the promised land, 12:1. Nation into the promised land. And then through him, Abraham, all the people of the earth will be blessed. That's why when the high priest said, I'll take all of their sin, when you're on a cosmic level, do you understand what I'm saying? You don't jerk around with certain things. You don't step on Superman's cape. You don't pee in the wind. You don't boldly go where no man goes. That's for the white people from the 70s. I got to keep everybody in the loop here. Then the third one is the Mosaic. Okay, this is with Moses. Any questions up to this point? Thoughts, concerns, comments? Everyone's still concerned about my vest? I'm not sure where you're... Okay, all right. The Mosaic covenant is with Moses. Now follow this. He says, now therefore, and this is Exodus 19, if you will indeed obey, say obey. Some of you kind of choked on that. Can I go with sometimes? If you obey my voice. Wait a second. What? You mean I'd have to be able to hear from you? See, in America, if you pray to God, you're religious. If he talks back, you're crazy. Just totally not stable. Obey my voice and keep my covenants. That's why Jesus said, my sheep hear my voice. Followers of me hear my voice, not heard my voice. Used to, back in the day. Oh, no, nay. You hear. And he says this, if you will hear my voice and keep my covenant, then you will be my special treasure. Turn to your neighbor and say, you're special. You're special. Aren't you special? You will be a special treasure to me above all people. The very first bigot was God. How dare he favor the Jews? Who does he think he is? God? Yes. Now, why did God pick the Jews? Excellent question. I'd like to know myself. Probably because they were terribly rebellious people. And God was like, they're the perfect example of a bad example. Let's go with the Jews. Okay? And if you know Jewish people, you'll giggle. The rest of you will be offended and not get it. So make some Jewish friends. Just hang out at a deli. Now, oy vey. He says this, you will be my special treasure to me above all people. And he says why he has the authority to do it. He says, because all the earth is mine. 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 It's like Dory. You know what I'm saying? Mine. That's, of course, for the younger people from the 90s. 2000, whatever. He says, these are not words that which you shall speak to these are words that you will speak with the children of Israel. Not Jacob, but the Jews who followed a spiritual encounter with God. Now, let me make this clear so you understand, because I'm repeating some of this. For those of you who already know what I'm saying, then just feel doubly educated. No one was ever born Israel. There was a guy named Jacob, and he wrestled with God through a spiritual encounter, and God changed his name and formed a covenant with him in which he changed his name to Israel, which means Prince of what? Okay, look. One of the things about being a Christian, you got to kind of read the book so you can work with me. Otherwise, you're really making this an uphill thing. Okay? That'll be your homework for next week. Look it up. You can see the younger people there with the Google. Just a minute. I don't need to look it up. I'm not remembering. I got this right here. So, he changes his name. Remember the whole covenant thing? This is the one that Jesus fulfilled, the Mosaic covenant, and why we don't sacrifice sheep anymore. We don't go to the temple. We don't follow the 600 rules that the Jews have. Okay, we're good. We don't have to do that. All right? And the reason was that after the people disobeyed the commands made in the previous covenant, God made another covenant. This time, the Davidic covenant, as a means to bring them back into relationship with himself. Every time they worshiped their religion or another religion over following the covenant relationship, they always got enslaved and put in bondage. Okay? You have to understand that. When you set up another idol, another god, you follow your own religion instead of your relationship with God, God will enslave you even though you're putting his name on top of your desire to deal with the parameters. Remember, when God makes a covenant, there is no discussion on the parameters. Are you following me? Okay. God decided the parameters are the parameters. That once they're set in stone. Okay. Matter of fact, Jesus was called the Ebenezer, the cornerstone. Now, he comes up with this second promise in Samuel 7:12 through 17. And he says this, when your days are complete, and he's talking to David, and you lie down with your fathers. Does everyone understand that's death? You're dead. You ever notice with the Jews, here's the problem between an American and a Jew. Americans live paycheck to paycheck 9 times out of 10. We wait till Friday to enjoy Saturday and Sunday to burn up all our money so we can make more money on Monday. Okay? We don't think down the road. An Asian principle, of course, is different. I believe it's the Chinese. You have to have a 10-year plan, a 100-year plan, and a 1,000-year plan if you're going to start a company. Okay? Asians think legacy. Americans think, when can I get a Bud Light? Okay? You understand what I'm saying to you? Okay? So when you read the Bible and you go, well, so what? So he talked about his family or his ancestors. Look, one idiot high priest jacked up a nation for years. One true high priest saved the world. So understand cosmic. You have to think much more mega. Okay. So, he says this. When your days are complete, you lay down with your fathers. I will raise up descendants, legacy, after you who will come forth from you, because the DNA follows a line. Matter of fact, they actually did a study, and everyone's DNA actually goes back to 2 people, and one was male and one was female. What a coincidence. He says, and I will establish his kingdom. His? The one who comes from him. So if you look in the book, how many people have read through Matthew and you read, and this begot this, begot this, begot this, begot this, begot this, begot this, and you're like, what is up with the begots? I'll tell you about the begots. The reason there exists the begots is because it shows that Jesus the Messiah had lineage to David, and he was fulfilling this covenant so that his kingdom will be without end. He shall build a house for my name, and I will establish his throne in his kingdom forever. The term is aestus tonionem, forever and ever and ever. Now watch this. I will be a father to him, and he will be a son to me. When he commits iniquity, I will correct him with the rod of men and the strokes of the Son of Men. Now, Jesus never sinned, so how is that possible? Remember when he became sin? And then the high priest said, oh, we'll take that. Give me some of that. I'd like all the guilt, please, for 5,000, you know. He says, but my loving kindness shall not depart from him, as I took it away from Saul, whom I removed before you. Your house and your kingdom shall endure before me forever. Referencing the Messiah again. Your throne shall be established forever, in accordance with all the words, all the vision Nathan the prophet spoke to David. Now the final covenant, and I'm going somewhere with this, is the new covenant, since his people failed at all others. Jews failed miserably. Okay. He's anti-Jewish. I'm a Jew. He's self-hatred. Jeremiah 31 through 34. In this passage, God makes several distinct promises. So turn me to Jeremiah 31 through 34. We're going to get somewhere with this. I'm building. Number one, he would give them the ability and the desire to follow him. See how we went from rules and religion to relationship? I see you're kind of hung up on the parameters and the religion thing, and you keep ending up in slavery. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to give you a love for me that will keep you in the rules. The reason why my wife doesn't wake up every day and go, no, don't have sex with other women today, is because we're in love. So she knows she don't have to remind me of the parameters. Okay. That's not that it'll stop a woman from reminding you of the parameters, but I'm just saying she doesn't have to. Because we love each other. So the love keeps me more towards the center, if you will, than on the edges of the perimeter looking for a way to shoot a move and get out. Love will do that to you, okay? It's why you follow Jesus. Not because of the rules, but the rules give a definition for why you stay in the rules. They just give a definite, like there's walls, this is the sanctuary, because it's got 4 walls around it, a roof on it, and it's a defined place. So he's saying stay in the center. But if you're in love with him, you want to stay in the center. Why? Because you want to stay in the center of his heart. That's why when Jesus died, he died like this. What was in the center? His heart. Very good. Now, all of this, he says in number 2, he will be their God, and they will be his people under the Davidic covenant, under the Messiah. That means everybody, including us. And then 3, he will forgive the sins of his people. The promise finds its ultimate fulfillment in Jesus Christ, according to Hebrews 8, 7 through 13, 9, 10, 11 through 24. Now, I said all of that, because that's all you guys can handle, and you're going to ask the question, what does this have to do with me? Why does all of this matter? Now I'll explain. Simply put, it's an understanding that faith is not about religion, but about covenant relationship. And why God gave us this long, drawn-out name that we have to have almost 2 cards to fill out, you know. And by knowing the covenant and why of the covenant and what it is, frees us from the fear of doubt and reveals to us our blessings and our purpose for being. Because you can follow the parameters and the religion all you want to and still not be blessed. Blessing comes from intimacy. Has anyone here ever tried to snuggle up to somebody that they really like and you find that they're nice to you? I know it's amazingly coincidental, but they're like, no way. Yet people you try to avoid, you know, if you treat your boss kind of badly and you're always looking to shoot out of work and then you go, hey, I need a raise. You ever notice he's like, who are you? But the guy who stays late, which is the center of course, the boss's heart and works really hard, gets a raise. Oh, I thought God doesn't play favorites. No, he treats everyone equally if they choose to stay his favorite. If they choose to stay his, it's your side of the fence. You understand? Not his. Covenant was one-sided. He said, I'm going to love you unconditionally. You going to love me back? Then I'll bless you. You don't love me back? Wear some shorts. You're going to be very hot. So this new agreement with the church, notice I didn't say individual Christians, but those who are a part of the church, the bride of Christ, called the new covenant, this new one, under Jesus, which is birthed off the Davidic covenant, is in effect, and he still has a few covenants with the children of Israel in the Old Testament. So when people say, well, we're not bound by the law, well, you're a little foolish. Yes, there are certain parts of the Old Testament that are still in play. You want to be bound to that whole no flooding thing. Because it's really rough on a house. Has anyone seen any of these typhoons and hurricanes and smog? You want to be bound to certain covenants that bring blessing. So when people say, well, I don't want anyone to preach, there's a cult called Bible Students. And they don't believe that anything that applies to the Jews applies to us at all. Only the stuff that mentions Gentiles, and we are considered goyim, Gentiles, uncircumcised, but then we take care of that. So your circumcision is of the heart, not of the other part. So they believe that it's only the things that involve the Gentiles involve us. The problem is they don't read what the Bible says, that we as Gentiles are engrafted, and that is, of course, a term for those who aren't into horticulture. When you want to mix certain kinds of wine together, they would take a branch from one, and they would actually make a little incision in the skin of another form of a branch, and they would, and they sew it in, if you will, and then you get a hybrid type of thing. We're a hybrid Jew. Therefore, some of the covenants that apply to the church universal also apply to us from Judaism, but not all. Because when my boy said, let his curse be upon us, it put a stop to some of the benefits that God had for the Jewish people. But it did not abolish them. The reason why this happened was because they rejected the Messiah. Now, the Bible says in the end times, Jesus will come back, and every eye will see him, and every tongue will confess that he is Lord, i.e. the Jews. And so the promise to Abraham that there will be a remnant. Now, who are these remnant? They're the Jehovah's Witnesses. Because that's what they believe. Here's the problem. The Jehovah's Witnesses believe that they are part of 144,000, the remnant that's talked about in the end times. The problem is, I don't know what's wrong with the Jehovah's Witnesses, but they didn't read what it says. It says each of the 12 tribes of Israel. 12 times, see what I'm saying? See the number? For those of you who aren't hip on math. So there's 12 tribes of 1,200, and they come up into this. These are the ones who, and you say, well, why is he playing fair? No, they're still going to have to bend their knee, but they're going to realize the Bible says how they missed it with Jesus, recognized as a people group. You say, how are they going to remember? They weren't even around. That was 2,000 years ago. Well, here's the funny thing about Jews. They don't treat their religion like we do, Christmas and Easter. No, they practice it. That's what defines them. Okay? On sundown on Friday, you're not going to the club to eat and hang out because no one can turn on the disco ball because you're not allowed to turn on the light. During Passover, they celebrate Passover. Okay? They rehearse who they are, what they are, the promises, they do it. They've been doing it for 4,000 years before there was anyone even called a Muslim. Remember, Muslims didn't come in on the scene until about 600 A.D. The Jews have been around 2,000 before that, okay, long time. Now, they rehearse it. They define themselves by the parameters of the covenant. Unfortunately, they don't define themselves by the God who made the covenant. So they're never going to forget. They practice it. Feast of Tabernacles. They build a little hut and they go in there and they pray. Okay? They circumcise their children on the 8th day. interesting to note, that is when the male has the highest amount of vitamin K, which is the ultimate coagulant, so you don't bleed to death. So you don't have to get a shot of vitamin K, and you don't know where that's from, and it probably has mercury in it, and leave it alone, for those of you who are big into vaccinations. Now, God knew 8 days this boy was going to have the most K, and we can't get him to bleed to death because I'm taking 10%. 10%. That number came up somewhere before, didn't it? Some people actually like trying to get 10% from them is like you're circumcising them or something. It's like they bleed just trying to bring it out of their wallet. Enjoy the church. Good night, everyone. See you all later. It's been great knowing you. All this stuff it's all there. I don't know why people trip out. If you read this book, it says what you're supposed to know. People say, that's not in there. Read it. It's there. Well, that's your interpolation of it. Okay, then study it in Greek and Hebrew. Go to school. I did. No one's stopping you. Now watch this. The reason for the new arrangement is because of the rejection of the Messiah by the nation Israel. So the old arrangement is put on hold but not canceled. God will pick it up again after his bride, the church, is raptured. Okay, there will come a day where we're out. I believe it's very soon, actually. Okay. I don't think I'll ever see 80. People are like, well, you drive a motorcycle. Of course. No, not because of that. You want alligators. There's something not right with you. You've got to go. If you study the book of Revelation, you'll see what that's all about. Okay? Now, until Israel accepts their Messiah, there will always be conflict in the Middle East. So anytime you see something going on with the Middle East, if Jesus didn't come on the scene, understand it's not going to last. Because Muslims have a thing in their religion, which I never pronounce it correctly, but it's like tawhid, which means you can lie to anyone who is not a Muslim, and it is not a sin against their religion. So they break every covenant. The reason they break every covenant is because they don't believe that we, as non-Muslims, deserve or can handle the truth. The problem is they can't handle the truth because Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. So that causes, of course, a problem. And so that's why they have broken every covenant that they have ever made or every contract with the Jewish people, because they don't have to follow it. And so we as stupid Americans are like, let's give them money to attack and keep an eye on Iran, and you get Saddam Hussein. And we're like, ooh, Saddam is tripping, so we created ISIS. Oh, now ISIS is tripping, and the Muslims are like, you guys are really dumb. We would take your money. And yes, we will, of course, fight for you. Until, of course, we no longer want to fight for you, and we take your money, and we become big, and now we fight you. That's just racist. No, I'm talking about a religion, not the Arabic people. Ha-ha! Well, that's religionist or something. It's just not right. No, it's history. Never be afraid of history, kids, because it already happened, and you can't fix it. But nowadays, everyone wants to revise it. Now, so, follow me. The reason all this matters is that God expects that we rule the earth. And we're commanded by God to do this in the book of Genesis. Now, who's the us? Well, let me make that clear. The us is exclusive. I've said this before. God is not inclusive. He is invitational. My marriage is exclusive. I said to her, what's up? No, I didn't say that. I said, for the next forever, you know what I'm saying? And she's like, cool. And so I said, but you got to take my name. There's a thing that just came out of CBS. 3 men are saying why they took their wives' names. It's very simple. They weren't men. It's California. What do you want? Still waiting for them to secede. Now, I said, but you can't hold on to your old name. You can't live with your family. You have to live with me. You can't sleep in your bed. You're going to sleep in our bed. See? So it's very exclusive. And only us are allowed. Well, the puppies sometimes, they break in on the scene. But no other, I'm not into that. It's too confusing. Can you imagine? She already takes the covers and give me this much to sleep on. I'm like a dog on flying Walenda. It's like a circus act. Oh, this is a wonderful seam along the bed. This is awesome. Yes, it's a great pillow. But it's exclusive. No one else is allowed to go there. God's the same way. A covenant, when you marry into him, he's exclusive. But he is invitational. He's saying, come and be a part of me. And his vetting process is really rather intense. So, your sphere of influence either is controlling you or you're controlling it based on how you live covenant. So if your life is a mess, it's because you're not following the covenant. You don't have a good marriage with God. Can I use that word? You're living single while being connected. And that's why you have people who are like, well, I go to church when I want to, not when we're supposed to, so we all get together. The word ecclesia, group dynamic, not I am an ecclesia. Only if you're schizophrenic. Then you can be your own group. I have people say, well, I have church by myself. So the Bible says the church has apostles, prophets, teachers, pastors, and evangelists. If you don't got 5 somehow functioning in the group, how do you have a church? If he said he gave to the church, so you have to have them there, right? Well, if 2 or 3 agree on anything that's touching, he's there in the midst. Yes, but doesn't make it church. It means that you have evoked his presence, but that's not the ecclesia. Ecclesia involves these. That's where the word ecclesia means. I don't like that. Take it up with my boss. Whatever it takes, if you go to my boss angry or you go to my boss glad, I still get paid, as long as you go. Go complain about me, that's fine. I'm okay with it. Pray for me. He's not right. My wife might even ask you to do so. Now, let's get into what this has to do with the price of tea in China. You are a ruler, not a rulee. Okay? And we get this from the Old Covenant in Deuteronomy 30:15, where he lays down the basis for our life. Okay? Which is piggybacked off of Genesis 1:26 verse and 28, where we're told to rule creation. But in verse 15 of Deuteronomy, turn with me there, Deuteronomy 30 verse 15, because now I'm gonna back up everything I said for those of you who are like, I don't know. Is anyone offended by what I'm saying? Well, you're an Arab. I mean, what do you want? No, he is. It's okay. Where would we be without Arabs? We wouldn't have falafel. Things you think about. Garlic paste, we would never have that. How many garlic paste people are here? Have you ever ordered out and they forget to put the garlic paste in there and you start to hate Muslims? Are you crazy? Sorry, I forgot the garlic paste. Say amen. So here God speaks in Deuteronomy and he says this: I have set before you today, this day, life and good. Also, as part of the covenant, death and evil. Well, I don't want to love a God who involves himself with evil. Then don't love yourself, because you do. Don't be a hypocrite. Verse 16, in that day I command thee this day to love the Lord. You're commanded to love God. Notice he says you're not commanded to follow religion. You're not commanded to follow parameters. You're commanded to love the Lord. So not only is he looking to draw you, but then he says, don't take it lightly, I'm telling you. How can you tell somebody to love somebody? I do it all the time. That's right. Love is not an emotion. Infatuation is an emotion. That's why they should ban weddings from anyone who is in Hollywood. Because they get married and fall out of love, and they just do it so that the tabloids have something to talk about, and they get a bunch of gifts. That's all they're doing, okay? And they say, well, I fell out of love. You never fell into love. You fell into infatuation. And then once she showed you all of her yoga positions and you know where everybody's tattoos are, you move on to something else. But it was never love, okay? So he says, I command you today to love me, to walk in the ways I tell you, and to keep my commandments, my statutes, and my judgments. For those of you who say we don't have to follow the law, that's interesting. He says that you will live and multiply. So then the antithesis of not following a covenant is you have lack and you don't multiply. Therefore, when I said your life is the way it is because you're not ruling the kingdom according to covenant, I'm right. According to the Bible. Are you following me? Now watch this. What's your name? Zach? God has something for you today. It will be very interesting. God, he's so rude. He interrupts when I'm trying to talk about him. You know, who does he think he is? I'm like, I'm in a flow right now, God. I got this. He's like, to tell him that. I'm telling you, I'm trying to work here. Yeah, and then and he says this, that you will live and multiply, and that the Lord thy God will bless thee in the land wherever you go to possess. Remember I said you're to rule and take dominion and everything else? But if your heart turns away, then say if you have doubts in your head, because a lot of people get very guilt-ridden. I don't know, I'm doubting God on this, and so I feel guilty about it. Take it easy. If it's in your head, that's one thing. It's when the doubt gets in your heart, you have a problem. Okay? He says, but if thine heart turn away, so you will not hear. So God expects you to be able to hear him. Well, that's not natural. No, that's called supernatural. We're supposed to hear supernaturally. Well, how come I don't hear from God? Maybe you're not listening. Maybe he's talking and you can't recognize between all the voices in your head. I had someone say, it was very interesting, I was thinking about this. If I get called up to court and they say to me, so you hear from God. Well, that we can see he's mentally unstable because he hears voices. I'm going to have them read something without opening their mouth. I'm say, did you hear yourself read that? You too have voices. You shouldn't be the prosecutor. You're nuts. And I've imagined like a snake. Can you see that? You can't see. You're seeing things and you're hearing things. You're nuts too. Come on with me to the nut house. Let's hang out. I think about these things because I've got nothing else to do. Now, he says, if your heart turns away, that you will not hear, but shall be drawn away and worship other gods and serve them, I denounce unto you this day that you shall surely perish. That's not loving Jesus at all. And thou shalt not prolong your days upon the land, so you're going to lose, whether you pass over to Jordan to go to possess it. Now watch this. He says, I call heaven and earth, God gets serious here, to record this day against you that I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. I have given you the parameters. Therefore, because you're a little slow on the uptake, choose life. That both you and your family and your family's family and your family's family may live. You ever notice that people who follow God usually don't end up dying in those terrible deaths that come from not following God? Just a coincidental thing I noticed that. That you will love the Lord your God, that you may obey his voice, that you may cleave unto, see a voice again, here we are hearing things, that you may cleave unto him. That's the same word that they use for the husband will cleave to his wife. For he is thy life and the length of thy days, that thou may dwell in the land which the Lord sware unto your fathers, to Abraham, there's the covenant, to Isaac, and to Jacob, Israel. See the different covenants? See how he repeats himself here. So how many people have met people and they argue with you about the Bible and they try to tell you what they think it says, but they've never read it? Or you meet the guy who, of course, had no friends, and during a time of depression or was in jail, he read the whole Bible all the way through, but from the eyes of someone who is, of course, in prison, wounded, and not praying, and already trying to find flaws in it because he claims to be an atheist until you shove my gun in his mouth and he goes, oh my God. And so you have these people try to argue the book instead of really study what the book says, to see that God repeats himself, he connects himself, he covers himself. Well, there's mistakes in the Bible. I've been looking for 40 some odd years for mistakes, and I haven't found one. God is very specific. It's just that it looks like mistakes when you look at it through the eyes of the American mindset, who has no concept of covenant and believes we're going to, we're waiting till Friday to get paid. You understand what I'm trying to show you? Okay? Ooh, he's got something quite big for Zach. I don't know what the deal is. He keeps... So to understand life and the challenges you face as a ruler in training, that's what you are, a ruler in training, you must realize that all you go through is to teach you how to rule. Why? Well, here's where things get weird. You live on this planet, and you're here to learn how to rule and reign. That's why Jesus says, I am your Savior, and you're seated in heavenly places. And Jesus sat down at the right hand of the throne of God, so you're seated next to Jesus. Okay, so you're to rule from a heavenly perspective down on the earth, because there's going to come a day where God is going to wipe out the earth. And it won't be because of North Korea. Okay? No man will ever destroy this earth. Even if you throw your garbage outside and we kill all the animals and global warming, and Al Gore was right. 7 degrees on Saturday. All right. Oh, we're heating up, we're heating up. Do you know what gives off the most CO2? Cow flatulence. Now they're going to ban cows, for gosh sakes. Poor cows are going to be walking around having a drink Bromo seltzer, put the Bromo seltzer in their feed. I love DiCaprio. I'm going to go fly out to Seattle on my private jet, burning up lots of fossil fuel, to jump into my big SUV with security and have a security team with lots of carbon monoxide, wearing my leather shoes, and, of course, my suit, which is made with partial products that are, of course, created in industries that burn up a lot of. And I'm going to take a bunch of paper, and I'm going to knock down several trees for that, and I'm going to protest how we're rough on the environment. Boy's about as sharp as a bowling ball. I kind of wish he drowned it in the Titanic. You know what I'm saying? Not just the actor. It's like, you're just not sharp, son. You're just not sharp. We've got to be better on the environment. Well, then, try walking to Seattle, son. The whole purpose of how you run your life, how you live by covenant, how you rule, is indicative of how you're going to rule in the next world. Because God is going to destroy the earth, and he's going to make it again perfect. Why? God always gets what he wants. And he said, there will come a day in which mankind will live in perfection because I say so. And you are not going to jack it up. I'm going to make it happen. It's called the millennial reign. It'll last 1,000 years. It's going to happen because God wanted it that way. He wasn't done with the whole Adam and Eve scene. So he's going to say, do over. And he's going to recreate the earth. Garden of Eden. Now, he's going to need people to run this earth. And, you can't just start running stuff until you know how to run stuff. And how good you are at running stuff dictates how big of an area you're going to run. Some people here are going to be This is my piece of sidewalk. Welcome. Sidewalk here. I'm running the sidewalk. Haven't had gum on it in months. Dog tried to pee it out. I shoot it away. Here up in Millennial, I'm in charge of this piece of sidewalk. Welcome to my kingdom. It's a sidewalk. Other people are going to have big, massive chunks of land because of how they followed covenant. Now, for those of you who are wanting to get into that, just read Thessalonians, read the book of Revelations, Matthew, you'll see what I'm saying. It's all there. You go, I'm going to prove him wrong. Good, I still get paid because you went and read the Bible, you went and talked to God. That's my job. How you get there is none of my business. What you say is none of my business when you get there, as long as you get there. Okay? Now watch this. Everything that happens to you, how you handle it, teaches you how to rule in eternity. That's why Romans 8:28 comes into play, which says, and we know that all things work together for the good of those who love him, who are called to ruling and reigning according to his purposes. So everything that happens to you, a death in the family, how you handled that will dictate how you'll handle things during the millennial reign. It's training for reigning. Some of you are like, wow, I'm in deep trouble. Other of you are like, ah. The problem is we don't have much time left. So get yourself on a quick speed course. Because I don't believe we're going to be here too much longer. I talked today with a guy, I won't say from where, but from a financial institution. And he did agree with me that China, Russia, and Turkey are actually forming a form of monetary system to override the euro dollar and to attack the American dollar system so that there will be one form of measurement, theirs, which is based on gold, since we are not under the gold system. Okay? The Bible says when Gog and Magog, Russia and Turkey, come together from a covenant, it won't be long before Jesus comes back. The Bible says in the end times there will be one form of money. One form of measurement, metric. One form of language. All international businesses contracts have to be done in English no matter what country they're from. There'll be one people, one Antichrist, one world order. From a guy named George. Didn't George, isn't he the same guy who called Israel to divide their land? Another coincidence. Leave it alone. Now listen for the black helicopters. No, we're good. We put aluminum foil up in the roof to cover this. Now, the teacher to teach how to handle this, is the Holy Spirit, according to Nehemiah 9:20 in the Old Testament, and in Luke 12:12 and 1 John 2:27. The Holy Spirit teaches you how to rule and reign. So how you stay in covenant and follow the commands are being led by the Spirit. How do we get led by the Spirit? You hear. You understand? And then you know how to apply. It's one thing to hear from God. You don't know what to do with it. Knowledge is accumulated information, but it doesn't change anything. Wisdom is knowledge applied. In order to know how to apply what you know, you need the Holy Spirit because the Bible calls them a teacher. Okay? So, the Holy Spirit is called the schoolmaster, if you look up the word. But God also did something else. He said, having him trying to stay supernatural in a world that denies supernaturals or who struggles with that, we're going to need something in the flesh. Just like he sent Jesus, he said, we're going to send some people. And he gave apostles, pastors, prophets, teachers, and evangelists, according to Ephesians 4:11. For the perfecting of the saints, or the maturing to reign, for the work of the ministry, for the edifying of the body of Christ. So I am your coach on how to rule and reign. See, that's what I do. That's my job. Now, you don't have to like me as a coach. I was a girls' softball coach. Beginning of the year, they hated me because they were soft and squishy. By the end of the season, I had them turn it into twisted steel. I made them do things like push-ups, and boy, would they whine, to which I would say, next time bring crackers and cheese. And they'd pitch a fit. I'm getting sweaty. I'm like, good. This is hot, and it hurts to slide, and good. You're just a donkey. I'm sure they said other things. I had one girl, she was pitching. I was teaching her how to pitch. And I said, and when you pitch, make sure that when you throw, you step out and put your glove up. I know what I'm doing. I said, listen to me. That girl can hit a ball really hard. That's a big girl. You pay attention now. I know what I'm doing. Look, I'm trying to help you out here. That ball is going to come at about 100 miles an hour at that distance. You don't want to get hit by it. Do you mind? I know what I'm doing. Okay. So I slowly step back. I start sweating. And sure enough, she pitches the ball. Line drive, left breast. Oh, it was like down in a blaze of glory. And I could have swore, I don't know. I had to hit her on the back to pop it back out. I mean, the bad boy just was boop. And I mean, it was, ooh. I was like, ooh. And she just looked at me, and she was trying to get her pride up because I was trying not to give you the I told you so thing, but still have some sense of compassion. But I really didn't because I was mad. And all of a sudden I watched the red start to come up, from her neck, And so I just escorted her over to the sidelines, because what else are you going to do? I'm not, going to rub it or nothing. So I just kind of looked at it and I was like, ooh, yeah. It's great to be a man sometimes. And she fell over, and I felt bad. And then, I gave her my best instruction because, of course, I don't have breasts, so I didn't know how to comment on injuries for breasts. So I said, take some aspirin and ice it. But if you like the effect, we can hit the other one, and then you don't have to worry about a breast job. So I was trying to come up with something. You know what I'm saying? I didn't know what to do with that. I was like, just kind of looked at her. Ooh, you're going to need a set for that. Point was, at the end of the season, we won. Matter of fact, in the 8 years that we did it, we lost the very first year, came in dead last. After that, we tied, and then after that, we came in first every year. And what was interesting was to watch the transition. They didn't like me at the beginning of the year, but at the end of the year, when we would win, I was the cheese. Coach, you're awesome. I just love you. The fickle chicks. Wait till next season, then we start first practice again, and you hate me again. You know what I'm saying? It's up and down like this. But the point is, they thought I was great because they had attained their goal. And it was the end of the season, so summer had started, and they looked great in their bathing suits. So they were happy too. You know what I'm saying? The point is that as your coach, there's going to be times you may not like me, and I'm okay with that. But when we get to heaven, is what this is all about. Do you understand? This is what this is all about, is understanding that I'm trying to get you blessed. I'm trying to teach you how to rule and reign. I'm trying to get you more. This is my job. Verse 13 says, I'm to do this for how long? Real simple. Till we all come together in the unity of the faith. That is really hard to do when people show up occasionally. Has anyone been a part of a team sport? What happens when you're in a team sport and one of the players you depend on in the sport shows up only sporadically? Ever want to kill them? You know what I'm saying? So this is the purpose of us all coming together. I coach, we win, and that's how this game gets played. You learn to rule and reign. And the rules are covenant by loving God. So he says this, till we all come together in the unity of faith and the knowledge of the Son of God. Now that word gnosos is not, I know about God. Nay. It's knowing him like a man knows a woman. Intimately. Okay? Totally different no. Unto a perfect man. In other words, until you become completely mature, unto the measure and the stature of the fullness of Christ. I've got quite a job. So the objective of the church through the fivefold ministry led by the Holy Spirit is to train you to hear from the Holy Spirit directly, love God through his word, to rule and reign and take dominion now so you can learn how to do so in eternity. That is the purpose of Christianity. It isn't to get you to heaven, but first to get you through the millennium. And before the millennium, it's to get you through this. That's what this is all about. Everything that has happened to you, no matter good or bad, there's a lesson to be learned. And how you handle it dictates if you're a king, a prince, or a pauper, or a joker. I didn't want to say peasant because that would have been nice. But since you said it, everyone blame him. So what does this have to do with anything? It has everything to do with a mindset. Do you view yourself as a prince or a peasant? Look at your life. Is it being ruled by a king or a clown? Is it based on covenant or your own opinions or how you feel? Laser. Forget it. It's for the younger people. They were asleep. I just woke them up. So what does God want? If you would. I want to pray for people today, and definitely for Zach, because the Lord interrupted me twice on this. He's like, you got to pray for Zach. All right.